I still remember a client meeting that we had with a widow who had just lost her husband, who was panicking. How am I going to provide for college, pay my mortgage, just survive? What am I going to do? And I remember being in that meeting with the advisor where he walked in with the insurance check and our financial plan that essentially told her, you did the right planning, your husband did the right planning, you're going to be okay.
The Heart of Advice. It's personal, it's pragmatic. Here on the eMoney Heart of Advice podcast, we explore how to navigate both sides to help you take your financial planning practice to the next level. Join us as we speak with financial professionals to learn how they deepen relationships and improve client outcomes.
Welcome to the Heart of Advice podcast, presented by eMoney. I'm Sasha Grabenstetter.
And I'm Connor Sung. We're your eMoney experts. Today on the podcast, we have Erin Voisin. Erin is a CFP board ambassador, managing director of wealth management services at EP Wealth Advisors, which is a fee-only RIA and financial planning firm that manages more than $23 billion in assets. She's an FPA pro bono for cancer volunteers. She co-chairs EP Wealth's Financial Literacy Committee and runs its internship and externship programs. She holds a variety of designations, including Certified Divorce Financial Analyst and Enrolled Agent with the IRS. She earned a degree in Business Administration with a minor in Psychology, and she is in the Investment News 40 Under 40 honoree in 2021. Erin, number one, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Good. Can we just start with a little bit more about you? How did you first become involved in the industry, and kind of what does your professional path look like?
Yeah, so I am the definition of a person that fell into this industry. So I always love to tell the story. I moved out to San Diego for college. And when I was a junior in college, my dad told me, if you want to live in California once you graduate, it better be with a full-time job. And I said, okay, I don't want to leave California. I'm from the Midwest and did not want to go back to the cold weather. So all I knew at that point was to go out and find internships. So I started applying to every internship on my college's career board and found the case design unit at MetLife, which was essentially their financial planning. I still to this day remember my interview, who I interviewed with, how it all went. But I just remember thinking, this is great. Like, it's numbers, it's working with people, like this could be cool. And again, my mindset at the time was I just need a job to stay in California. And 18 years later, here I still am in the industry doing it and loving it even more. So
it's such a fun path. And congrats on still being in Southern California.
Yes, still here.
Yeah, no cold weather for you. So Erin, you've said that you believe in the power of financial planning to improve people's lives and ease their burdens. Can you offer us some stories on the impact that you've seen in clients' lives?
Yeah, one that always comes to mind is back when I started at MetLife. And I think this is really what kept me in the industry and knowing this is what I wanted to do. Because, one of the things that being at an insurance company, we issued the insurance checks. So I still remember a client meeting that we had with a widow who had just lost her husband, who was panicking. How am I going to provide for college, pay my mortgage, just survive? What am I going to do? And I remember being in that meeting with the advisor where he walked in with the insurance check and our financial plan that essentially told her, you did the right planning, your husband did the right planning, you're going to be okay. Here's how we're going to get the kids to college. You're going to get to stay in the home. And here's the life that you're going to get to live. And I just remember the tears that just poured from her eyes, because you could just see like the weight of all of that just being lifted off her shoulders. And so that was really what showed me like the power of planning, and doing planning the right way and protecting yourself can just really ease a lot of just burdens that people can carry. And this is a very unique situation because there was obviously a death. But it's one that stuck with me to really just ensure that people are doing the planning they need to set themselves up for the future. And, I always like to tell people, you see the good, the bad, and the ugly in this industry. You've had the tough conversations where You're telling the person who's in their 60s that they have to work longer because they haven't saved enough, or they have to downsize their home because, they can't afford to live in it and they need the equity to, continue to sustain their lifestyle. And then you have the great stories where you're celebrating the person's retirement early, or they're buying that vacation home, or that, the boat or the dream car they've always wanted. So when you actually get to see the results of the plan, I think it just becomes really rewarding. And I think that's why, for me in particular, as I've built out my team, I wanted everyone to be client facing, because I think being able to see your plan really come to life and see that reaction in clients just helps make you so much more invested in wanting to do the next one and see the next story and see the next, plan that you're going to help bring to life.
I think financial planning is so people focused. So it sounds like you landed in the right spot.
Definitely.
Mental and moral currency. Pivot a little bit. You talked a little bit about some of the actual delivery, the results. Obviously, eMoney definitely focusing on how technology impacts client outcomes and being somewhat of a vehicle to do that. Can you, number one, talk about just the kind of the intersection between advisor technology and this new implementation, or what I'll call newer implementation of financial psychology, and then in your own engagements with clients, and then as you think about building standards and kind of pushing those things out across a larger team, you just talk about the advocacy, the flexibility of being able to continue to be personal. I know there's 3 questions in one, but just you can take it and run.
All right. Sounds good. I mean, yes, the power of technology and doing planning, I think, is so critical. And this is where I love eMoney and how we leverage it in plans, because, seeing things in black and white in numbers helps drives decisions. So, we always talk about people can do back of the napkin math and go tell someone to go do something, or off the cuff, this is rough numbers. But when you can actually visualize it for a client and they can see that it's their plan. This is my income. This is my budget. These are my assets. This is what it means. This is my tax bracket. When all that comes to life, you see people just more willing to do the next step, to listen to you, because you have numbers backing up everything you're saying. So I'm a very big believer that in any type of analysis that my team and I do, I want a tech solution behind it. I want numbers justifying our solutions. And I think that's why for eMoney, why we leverage it across our firm and why our entire team uses it consistently, because it's also great to make the client a part of the plan. I love getting to pull it up live, and, clients just think it's pure wizardry or magic when you're changing variables and running scenarios, and they get to see, the wish list come out, as I always say, when you've seen a successful plan and now you get to say, well, what would you do? And their eyes kind of bug out a little bit, and they start to give those different scenarios they want to see. And then the planner can sit there and, do all the inputs, and then they see the results come to life. That makes the planning just interactive. It makes it fun. Clients are engaged. They're not reading a PDF that you're putting in front of them. So I think being able to use the tech, make it live and personable, and then replicate it across the team has been really important and crucial for us.
How have you thought about actually disseminating kind of the standards? Obviously, you figured out a great balance of how to use the technology, number one, which is somewhat of a feat in and of itself. But then I think the actual engagement, the conversation, you talked about the wish list coming out, getting to that point, being able to ask the right questions and have that conversation, I think is key. But everybody approaches it differently. So I guess number one, do you have any tips and tricks on actually using the technology and having a conversation with the client to get to that wish list coming out? And then number two, as you think about instilling some standards and mentoring others and some aspect of team environment, how are you helping others think about their personalized way to do it? Because Erin's way is might not be Connor's way, which may not be Seisha's way, but we all will end up getting to a similar spot. Well, ideally, we'll get to a similar spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important for me, we talk about quality of advice. So as I started building out our process and our team at EP about 8.5 years ago, I wanted to ensure that no matter what office you walked into, you were getting the same deliverable. And that sort of has now transitioned into what we like to say, we have a set process with local flavor. Because to your point, every advisor is going to add their twist and their personality to it, which is great. We want everyone to have that flexibility, but I still want a client to have a baseline set way of getting a meeting done. And whether that's the net worth, the cash flow, a Monte Carlo, a set way we go through the recommendations, a set way that our team looks at a client's plan. So that goes back to like the quality of advice that I want to make sure all of my planners are approaching a plan the same way. And so that takes a lot of time, energy, training, and development because yes, are you all being able to read a tax return and pull the same type of information off of? Are you all going to spot the same mistakes that might exist in an estate plan, on a pay stub, wherever it is? So it takes a lot of dedicated effort to train the team. But that's also why we decided to really make it a dedicated effort into having a planning team and not putting that on our advisors who that's where I could see the wheel sometimes come off the track because you're getting people who aren't in the software every day, all day. eMoney is one click of a button and it could alter a plan and people can panic and not know what they did. So I decided to sort of take that risk off the plate and say, I'm just going to train a team that supports our advisors to do all that work. And I think that's been really helpful in ensuring that we can have that consistent process, that same quality of advice. And I mean, to your point, like not everyone can do that. Not everyone is at the size we are where they can build an entire planning team. But I think the more you look at dedicated roles and really making someone the subject matter expert of the software allows then advisors to, I think, do what they do best. And that's going to be the relationship part. And I think sometimes if you can pull those two apart, you're going to have a better planning experience.
Yeah. And you're setting your business up for success by including somebody maybe younger in the process and amen on dedicated roles. That is a soapbox that I will stand on forever.
You and me both. I'm very much about that.
Erin, I would really, well, first off, I love that you said that, it's like wizardry, it's magic. eMoney is, this piece, as a fellow Hufflepuff, I just think about, the pieces of this that, it is like magic, putting pieces in Decision Center and watching it go. So, but as a leader in your firm's internship and externship programs, I kind of want to hear a little bit more about the tech and the financial psychology skills that are evolving for that future financial planning next gen. I want to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we just wrapped our summer program. Our interns actually all just kind of finished the last couple of weeks. And, it's a discussion we're continuing to have about having them be there sort of ongoing because, again, that was my life. I was an ongoing intern and it was what got me here. But that is where, we train them to eMoney. We want them learning the planning. We want them to be a part of planning meetings. It's important that they see everything we're seeing from start to finish, because I also think that's going to continue to motivate them into continuing with the CFP and the exam and like continuing in the industry, the more that they get to see really a true day in the life. So we do not hold back. We are not leveraging our interns to go clean up the CRM or cold call or make copies. They are in the weeds, touching documents, touching software, and working across our entire advisor and planning team to be a part of that client relationship for the extent that they're there.
That's awesome. And I would have loved that as a student, just being in the trenches, getting that relationship experience, because definitely for a lot of students, we hear that they don't get those pieces. So that's awesome.
I still remember my internship, and I remember the first time, at the time when I started, they used NaviPlan and the desktop version. So if anyone is familiar with that, it's very archaic looking. And I remember the stack of documents they put on my desk and they said, here, go input it. And I had no idea what to do. I was 20 years old, barely knew what a 401k was. And here I am being, there's estate documents and tax returns and pay stubs sitting in front of me in a software that I was expected to input it. But that's what got me into it was, okay, how does this actually all work? What am I reading? What am I looking at? So I'm actually very grateful that they kind of threw those projects at me. And I think that's what we've tried to do in our internship because it has been the most impactful.
It is great to hear. And as as a fellow previous intern at eMoney, I had a somewhat similar experience doing some data entry and that, kind of cutting my teeth in the technology as well as understanding financial statements. And it definitely made a difference when it came time to actually understanding what some of the things that I was doing meant and some of the actual application of all of this stuff. I do want to just pivot a little bit towards the psychology. Obviously, the CFP board, having within the last couple of years made it part of the curriculum. So I think as the profession continues to move towards this more human-based relationship, or as I like to put it, humans helping humans. But you studied psychology in college. How do you think that that's helped with your financial planning career? As you said, you've kind of stumbled your way through it, but it had to have had some meaningful impacts.
It really did. And I mean, whenever I tell people that I had that psychology component, they're like, oh, you found the perfect industry. And I said, yeah, I really did, because I never understood how numbers and people would really come together until you find financial services. And when I took the CFP, it was still the technical part where you were you were tested on the 6 key areas and you were doing all the calculations. And all I kept thinking was like, software does this for me. Like, this is what software does. This doesn't tell me like that I can talk to a client and have a conversation when it comes to the hard stuff. So I love that the CFP board is migrating to that, because I mean, if you think of where tech is headed, where AI is going to come in, it's going to do a lot of the technical part. Like, let me get the data in there. Let me solve and calculate that. But it's not going to replace the human element of delivering the news and talking through it and educating a client. And that's what I think is so necessary and needed, is the people skills. So anytime I interview a potential planner, I will tell this to like my director and my team. I say, I can teach the technical skills. I can't teach the people skills. I am probably more focused on finding someone who can have a conversation and is relatable than someone who can go, tell me what a tax return says. That's great. I can teach you that. So I think finding people that can have conversations, knowing you're going to have great ones and you're going to have really difficult ones. I think that's a differentiator when you're hiring someone for a role like this.
Especially, it sounds like the way that you guys are treating your internship and externship programs, that it's really helping students at that point figure out if it's something that they want to do. I think when you're in school going through classes, building financial plans is less than half of the actual battle of becoming a financial advisor. So I commend you and the firm for how much time, effort, and capacity you guys are dedicating towards helping the next gen of financial professionals. It's again some aspect of mental gratification, I'm sure, but it's definitely helping.
Yeah, I mean, I always, whenever we interview interns, and we always ask, what do you want to do in 5 years, or where do you see yourself in the industry? The default is always an advisor. And it's hard to hear that sometimes because, like, again, I'm not in a true advisor. I mean, I'm in a planning role. I've always been in a client facing role, but I never went the advisor route. And so I think this has been really great for what I tell people is to see like a 10,000 foot view of advisor life and just the industry itself to really make sure you're in the right role. Do you like the client facing aspect? Maybe you like being behind the scenes. Maybe the investment part of the conversation is what speaks to you. So I think being in a planning internship gives you a bird's eye view of just all the different aspects of financial services. And I think helps you better identify where you actually see yourself in the industry once you graduate and move on.
Again, I think that's really powerful for students to really understand how and what they want to do. I think, like you said, they all want to be advisors. And I think that's a really common thing. But that human element, I really want to go back to that human element, that relatable conversation. I want to know, like, what kind of questions are you asking them to get to know them a little bit more, to understand that they are a good fit for the internship or the externship?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, one of the biggest things I look for, and maybe there's a little bit of bias here, I do always say that, is I always like to understand if they're willing to do this while going to school. Because I think that tells me a lot about their work ethic, their time management, their organization skills, and how they're going to handle that. If they can handle an entire workload of college classes and then come to an internship and give it their all, that tells me a lot. So if it's someone who I think is just looking for the summer internship, or sometimes what I like to say, the resume booster, I try to get to the heart of that pretty quickly, because I want to feel like you're invested in learning and being a part of our firm or clients' lives, or seeing this ongoing. So I try to suss that out a little bit. And then I really try to make it conversational. I want to see how they can just talk to me and I get it. Sometimes they're super nervous and they don't want to, they really want to focus on their technical skills, which I can totally appreciate. But let's just have a conversation. Can you open up? Are you charismatic? Do I feel like there's personality coming out in your answers? Are you expanding beyond the yes and no's? Are you giving me color and examples behind what we ask? That tells me a lot about whether or not I think they're going to be successful in our type of role.
I do want to pivot just a little bit. And I know that you're a really strong advocate for women in the financial services industry. And what advice do you have for leaders who want to see more women in advisory roles?
I think it comes down to compensation plans, and this is something, as I've worked a lot with the CFP boards, Women's Initiative Council, we talk about this a lot. Women are great at relationship management, but some of them are just terrified of sales goals and not wanting to go out and have to hunt and kill. So I think it's ensuring that you're compensating them appropriately, allowing them to grow and build a practice that's going to work for them. Being a mom of two, I also see, the mom and the parent element come in a lot, where a lot of times you're bearing a lot of that responsibility as well. So you need that flexibility. And that's where I always like to profess why this industry is actually so fantastic for a working parent, because there can be so much flexibility. But I think it's creating a little bit of psychological safety sometimes for women, to ensure that they feel like they can, be at the kids' winter performance or duck out early because there's the practice, while still being able to manage a book and hit the right goals. And I think it's just important that firms really embrace that, allow for it, cultivate it, and support it.
It's like, as a woman, I find that very powerful, especially that hidden load that we talk, the hidden load of women, right? Not only being a mom and a spouse, but also being a working individual. It's a lot. So thank you.
And I never want to discredit the working dads. I always want to put it out there. It's just, when statistically, women just bear it more. We feel it more. It affects us differently. And I've seen it across the team that I've had. And I think it's important to recognize. And I mean, they always say the canned phrase, like, it starts at the top, but I make sure my team sees on my calendar if I'm going to be at any of my kids' stuff, because I want them to know that I'm a mom too. And a lot of life happens between the hours of 9 and 5. And sometimes, with the flexibility that this industry provides, I want my team to know that they can be at those things.
But what a great role model you're being for the next generation of women advisors, to let them know, hey, it's okay. I can go to my kid's soccer game, baseball game, whatever it may be, and still have this wonderful, work balance.
And leader, it's walking the talk, which I definitely commend you for. Speaking of somewhat of building communities both inside your company and outside of your company, I know, having worked with you for a while at this point, that you're part of the Southern California book club study group. Do you guys have an official name?
We don't, but we should come up with one, because it's about time. I mean, it's been a couple of years now.
I think it would be that'd be a fun topic to cover. But I did just want to, a lot of advisors out there are looking for additional community of, advisors from all sizes, shapes, and of firms. But can you talk a little bit how the group got together and some of the topics that you guys cover inside of your discussions?
Yeah, I mean, the study group has been amazing. I mean, I look forward to the sessions. I absolutely love it. So Hank, who's our relationship manager, really is who helped coordinate it, because Jennifer, who is at Mercer, was new in her role, and she reached out to Hank, essentially saying, like, hey, can you connect me with people? I'm new in this role. I'd love to talk with other directors of financial planning. So he reached out to myself, Susan, and Kelly to see if we would be interested in sort of starting the study group. And we all jumped at it, because to your point, we all want that community. We all want to talk. And it's been, honestly, I think it's been a couple of years now. We meet about every 6 weeks. We've seen each other in person, which has been fun. And honestly, the topics range. I mean, some of them are very eMoney focused. Like we've had really great conversations with internal people at at eMoney about the portal or enhancements or product suggestions that we would all like. But we're also all females in the industry in leadership positions. So we've talked about that kind of, hey, prepping for a review, or I got this feedback from a team member. And others have been, we're also in the world of M&A. So how are we supporting M&A? How are we bringing firms on? How are we finding talent? I mean, it's each session. I mean, people might throw out a topic and the conversation just flows from there. So they've been really, really rewarding. And I would definitely encourage others to reach out and start them, because yes, we're all competitors. I mean, that's what we all joke about. Like, we're all competitors. People might find it weird. Like, are you just out there sharing secrets about what everyone does? And really, it's not like that at all. I mean, I always say we're all playing with the same tools in the toolbox. It's just how we all deploy those tools is kind of where, we can be differentiators. It's really a group that just supports one another. And that's what I have found probably so great about it, is that the competition comes out of it. And it's really a great opportunity for us to spend an hour just talking about life in this industry.
That's wonderful. And more than anything, whether it's, eMoney facilitated or not, there are countless ways of finding communities of folks that, whether it's geographic, gender, race, sort of whatever, to try and find a place where you can have conversations with folks that are similar minded, but also, dissimilar, where you're making each other better.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not in a leadership role, but I would love to join the study group. If you've got a membership open, please let me know. So
it's funny because so many people at my firm now know that I do this. So now I'm starting to reach out. Like, I have one of our members of our finance team reached out because she's like, hey, Christopher is our CFO, mentioned you're in the study group, and he thought this might be a good opportunity for me to start one. So like, could you make an introduction? So again, just start those conversations. Like, who's in like-minded roles as you? Find someone who might know someone at another firm. Because I guarantee I bet someone in a finance team at another, RIA would love to have a conversation about best practices and teams and all of that.
That's awesome. In like a similar vein, you're a big advocate for financial literacy. And I kind of want to know what projects you're involved with at the moment that support this cause.
Yeah, so this really for us started about 7 years ago when one of our interns coincidentally approached one of my fellow colleagues saying her high school teacher was asking if we would come in and help present to her class. And we brought it to our women's initiative at the time. There was a group of about 7 of us that raised our hand to say, yes, let's go out there. We'll build a presentation. We'll build deliverables. Did it in about 2 weeks, and we went and delivered it to the class. And we left on like such a high because the questions that were being asked, how engaged the students were in really wanting to understand saving, budgeting, basics of investing. I mean, you name it, that it really then just propelled us to build this out to the point where I started like cold emailing and cold calling schools just to like offer this as a free service. I was like, let us come in. Like, we just want to talk to your students about the importance of this. And we started getting responses. Schools just really started saying, this would be great. Come in and talk at our career fair, or come talk to our senior class that's about to graduate. And that was just so fun. And it's just been really rewarding to getting to do the school, impact of it. And then that's where the externship really came, because we were getting feedback that these one and done workshops, like, do we have anything else? Can something else happen to continue it? So that's when we started the externship, where we essentially allowed any students that participated in any of our financial literacy workshops to come into EP for a 2-day sort of unpaid program. We usually do it in the summer. And we put them through, 2 days from 9 to 5. They build a resume. They do a mock interview. They learn business communication and corporate etiquette skills, like proper things to say at work, dress code. We put them through a networking event. So I email the office and I say, hey, we're having an ice cream social at 3:00 on Thursday. So they all rush the kitchen. And then the externs have to come in and actually network, and they can't stay in their little bubble. They got to go talk to people at EP. So that's been fun. And then they sit with our founders and they, learn about how they started the business and their entrepreneurial spirit. They meet with all the directors of the various departments. They do a stock market game. Like it's a jam-packed 2 days. But what's really great is that it's a mixture of students that are interested in financial services and those that aren't. So I think of a student who joined who wanted to be a doctor, but he was like, I'm going to graduate with a ton of student loan debt. I need to know what to do with my finances. So I thought coming to a program like this for 2 days would be great. So I've always appreciated that, because like how forward thinking he was being, knowing the career that he was choosing. So kind of continuing to build on projects like that is really where our focus is.
This is such a great impact, especially for those students who are, wanting to come in the industry and those who aren't. So I really commend you, and especially those younger age groups, man, they really ask some of the really hard questions, I think. So.
Yeah, I've never been asked more about how to monetize TikTok and YouTube before than starting to speak to high school students these days. I mean, when you think of like I mentioned the guy who wants to be a doctor, the next guy wanted to be a rapper. So I was like, all right, I gotta walk the walk here of, dreams versus reality. But it's been pretty interesting to see just what kids these age think about in terms of how they're going to make money and live their life, with influencing now being a thing and social media coming up more on that, even Bitcoin and things like that they hear about or they see, on TikTok that they think is the reality of financial advice. So it's like a little bit of myth busting sometimes that has to happen.
That's good, though. They need that myth busting. I feel like there's a lot of misinformation on TikTok. So I'm just going to be waiting for you to be a financial influencer on TikTok now. So
you got to talk to compliance. I would love to do that, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like now we got compliance entering the picture.
Well, while we wait for you to jump into TikTok, I know you're, obviously this episode is wonderful and we appreciate having you. You've been all over our Heart of Advice blog. You've joined me in a summit panel before, but where else can listeners connect with you or hear more from you?
Well, first, I appreciate it. I love getting to work with eMoney, and I'm grateful that you always reach out to collaborate, because I've really appreciated the partnership. I mean, for me, it is, find me at conferences. I love going to the local conferences. I also, as part of my CFP ambassadorship, I write blogs for the letsmakeaplan.org website. So that is also where you're going to see more planning advice from me on there.
I just have one last question for you, Erin, and we always ask this to every advisor who's on. It's, how would you define the heart of advice when it comes to financial planning?
I mean, I think the heart of advice is just finding that thing with the person in front of you. What is that true goal? What is that one thing for them that is keeping them up at night with their finances and helping them, solve for it? So whether it's retiring, whether it's paying off debt, sending their kids to college, I think truly getting to the heart of what is that part of their finances they think about the most and helping calm that, I think is really what gets people, again, ready to take action, ready to move forward, but also where you just see the impact of what you're doing come to life.
I think being that calm in the storm is a great way to say what an advisor can do with their clients. So, Erin, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you. You seem like a force, and it really comes through in this conversation. And I hope I get to meet you at a conference soon. But I know Connor and I have really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for joining us.
The Heart of Advice podcast is produced by eMoney Advisor, a leading provider of technology solutions and services that help people talk about money. Learn more at eMoneyAdvisor.com, where you can find additional resources for advisor success, including the Heart of Advice blog, as well as ebooks, CE webinars, and events.